Hi, this is Joe and welcome back to the shop. This week we're going to take a look at the Harbor Freight 1-inch by 30-inch belt sander. Comes with an adjustable table for the belt. It also comes with a 5-inch disc with an adjustable table. We're going to take a look at how to adjust it, how to change belts, some of the issues with the belt sander. I primarily bought this to grind high-speed steel lathe tooling as well as tungsten electrodes. I put some Dykem on the main table so I can check the angles. To adjust the table, you loosen the pinch bolt and then you can change the angle of the table. I use that for setting up the appropriate angle when I'm grinding high-speed steel tool bits. I put Dykem on the surface so I can get an accurate estimation on my angles. You use compound angles when you're grinding. Sanding belts I pick up from Harbor Freight. They're very inexpensive. I use 80 grit, 120 grit. For tungsten electrode grinding, I use 80 grit. The belts are rather inexpensive and they last a fairly long time. One of the modifications I did was to take an 1.25 PVC coupler and I put it on my lathe and bore out the inside so I can then fit that coupler to my vacuum cleaner exhaust, and on the side of the belt sander I can then connect that. This is really good for when you're grinding thoriated tungsten electrodes. You don't want to breathe any of that dust, so it sucks it right down into the vacuum. On the external belt sander, there's 3 adjustments. You have the 2 table adjustments, and then you have a belt centering adjustment. So right on the back, you can adjust that. I'll turn it on here, and you can adjust and center the 1-inch belt across the rollers. So it works fair, doesn't work really well. Then what you can do is then on the inside behind the back cover, there's the tensioner for the belt. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull the cover off and show you how to change the belt. I reposition the camera here, and now what we're going to do is you need 2 17mm wrenches and a cross-point screwdriver. So what we'll do is we'll use the wrenches, we'll pull the cover off, and we'll show you how to replace the belt. There's a thumb screw up at the top. You loosen that thumb screw, which will loosen the cover plate, so you can get at the tensioner and the belt. There's 2 pins at the very bottom, so you just tilt the cover down, pop that off, and then what we do right at the very top on the clear plastic cover, there's a single cross point screw. You can loosen that and then pop off the plastic cover. Now you have access to all of the rollers and the belt. So what we're going to do now is we'll get our wrenches and we'll loosen the tensioner. And there's just a single tensioner. You can loosen that, and then the belt pivots on that back or 3rd roller. So we'll then pull the belt off. You have to pull the belt through the table. This belt is pretty well shot, so I'm going to get a new belt, and we'll show you how to mount that belt on. We start out by feeding the belt through the table, but one thing I want to remind you of is there is an arrow on the belt, and there's also an arrow on the back of the belt sander. You want to make sure the arrows are both going in the same direction. So we'll feed the belt through the table and then onto the 2 front rollers, and then we can reach behind and move that tensioner to slip on the belt, and make sure all 3 rollers or that the belt is on all 3 rollers. Then I can move with my left hand there, that tensioner back and forth. It's spring loaded, so what you can do is you can, as I'm saying, I'm just testing the belt there. You can take your wrenches, and the tension of the spring should hold that belt in a pretty close position so that you can then tighten the tensioner nut. And once I get that tightened, then I'll spin the belt and make sure, again, all 3 rollers are lined up with the belt. And then we can reassemble the cover, and then we can test out that test out that belt to make sure it's working okay. Right before you put the cover back on, you want to really make sure that your belt tension is adjusted properly. You don't want it too loose, but you don't want it too tight either. So take the cover, slip the two tabs at the very bottom in, and pop it up over the thumb screw hole. Get your thumb screw and tighten that back up. Then what we'll do is we'll get the plastic protector, if I can get that thing feeded on here properly. We'll get the plastic protector, and I left the screw loose. I didn't remove it completely. We'll just pop that protector back on and get the screwdriver and tighten up that screw to hold that protector in place. Once we get the cover back on and tightened up, I can then turn on the sander, and I can do the belt adjuster to make sure my belt is centered. Doesn't work that well. You only have a teeny bit of movement, but you can do that. Primarily, though, now recently I've been using the belt sander to grind my tungsten. What I do is I get a drill, and I mount the tungsten electrode into my drill. And then I turn on the belt sander, and then at this point I can turn on the drill. And you never want to grind the tungsten sideways. You always want to keep the tungsten in parallel with the belt. And notice the sparks are flying off the tungsten down into the belt sander. By using the drill, you can get an even grind on your tungsten. Again, you don't want to grind sideways. What I do then is once I'm done, I wipe off the tungsten. I get a piece of Scotch-Brite and clean off the tip of the tungsten, any dust, and polish any crud that was left over higher up on the electrode from previous TIG welding. One thing you want to make sure that you do is if you are grinding your own tungsten, make sure you use a dedicated belt. You do not want to contaminate your tungsten. So let's say, for example, if I'm grinding high-speed steel, I want to change that belt. I only want to use one belt for tungsten. Do not want to mix those. You will contaminate your tungsten. Okay, that's pretty much it for this video. I really enjoy the belt sander. And thanks for watching, and check back from time to time. I will be putting out more videos.